So we get clients any number of ways, but some of the main ways are actually Google, and we strive to get good Google reviews. We like to take good care of people, but it's always nice when they leave a review. And then people will call us from online and talk through, hey, do you want to help me find this? But it doesn't just work with that 2-minute conversation. We actually go through a pretty lengthy process to decide to work together. So we'll outline that here so that you can learn some of the ways that we discuss whether or not we're going to be a good fit. So the very first thing that we'll ask you when we introduce ourselves for the first time is if you're pre-approved. And this is just to help us know if you are looking seriously, what price range we should be looking in. And it may be pre-approved with a lender. It might be that you're a cash buyer and you've got the funds on hand. It just kind of helps us know what stage of the game that you're at. And if you're not pre-approved, we have a great list of preferred lender partners that we can refer you to, and we will make those introductions so that you guys can connect, and you will interview them too. You kind of talk through if they're going to provide certain services, what the costs will be, and how they'll communicate. All of those things are important when choosing a lender. But if they're on our list, we've worked with them before, they've done a great job with other clients, and you can trust that they're going to do a great job for you too. Different lenders provide different types of loan products, and so you will want to talk to several of them to make sure that they're supplying exactly what you need for your specific circumstances. So you might be watching on YouTube looking for a buyer's agent right now, and if you are, I think it's pertinent to invite you to reach out to us in several different ways. You can go to our website, put in your information. You can text, call, or email us. You can put a comment here on this video, and then we will definitely get in touch with you and find a way to help you do what you need in the buying process. So if we have an idea of your price point via a pre-approval letter or cash in the bank, then we move on to the next step, and that is a buyer consultation. These two steps can kind of squish together. Like if you're working on the pre-approval process and you're not quite sure yet, we can still meet and go over other things like locations and have to haves and want to haves and timing, so that we're on the same page as far as all of that goes. And this appointment is called the buyer consultation. So at that appointment, we can do it in person here in the office. I can come to your home. We can also do it through the Google Meet platform that we use. So at that buyer consult appointment, we'll get to know each other. We'll talk about ways that you like to be communicated with. We will go through kind of a questionnaire that you also can fill out prior to the appointment. And it's a form that we ask you to complete that has parameters for searching for the property. And then we'll ask more detailed questions about that, or I can fill it out as we're talking if you haven't had time to. And that gives us detailed information to find the right property for you, because we're always searching. So that buyer consult really gets ingrained in us, what you need. And that way, when we're out even looking with other people, we are on the hunt for the right property for you. And sometimes when we go to listing appointments, we're like, oh, this would be perfect for so-and-so. So the buyer consult's a really key step for that, for getting to know each other and knowing your needs for the property that you want to buy. The other important part of the buyer consult right now, because we've had a lot of legal changes recently, is a buyer agency agreement that needs to be signed before we ever view a property together. So we have to have that in the state of Colorado, and on that form it sets out payment. We'll go over that in a little more detail. So on that form, we have a typical percentage that we usually request for compensation, and it can work out a lot of different ways. That percentage will be on the buyer agency agreement, but you may or may not end up paying that whole percentage. It might be that the property that you're wanting to purchase eventually, the sellers are offering a percentage of that, or the whole thing. It could be that we do some kind of flat fee if we're looking at purchasing just land, or you already know exactly what you're going to purchase and we haven't spent a lot of time going out to different properties. It's entirely negotiable, but it does need to be lined out in that agreement before we look at property together. And again, it's the buyer agency agreement. If you have questions about that or the laws surrounding it currently, feel free to put a comment below, reach out with a text, a call, an email. We'll answer any of your questions about that. The buyer consult form is great because it asks things that you might not think to tell me, and I might forget to even ask if we're talking about lots of other things, getting to know each other. The basics are easy, right? How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, minimum square footage, locations that you like. One thing that people always mention usually is if they need a fenced in yard or not for a pet, or if they would like a certain amount of land. Those are all basics. This goes into even more detail, and it helps us know things like, are you willing to fix something up? Do you want to be move-in ready? Are you hopeful to move in the next 3 months? Or is an indefinite amount of time okay in your search? And it just helps us get a really clear picture of what you need. And then that way we can help even better because we have the clear picture in our head too. But going and looking at properties is really, besides the buyer consultation, the best way for us to be on the same page. It's a lot like dating, I always like to say. I tell people that all the time, but it's true. It's like you can't really know what the right thing is until you've seen a lot of the wrong thing. And when you go look in person, it's so different from looking at pictures online. So you have to go do that some. And when we do that together, I always get a great sense of like, oh, they really liked this, this, and this, but they hated that. And then it's in me too, what is right for you, because we've gone and shopped together. We've gone on all the dates together. I think another thing to know about that is that I don't mind looking at a lot of properties. So there's not like we can only look at 20 properties and then you have to buy one. That's just not how it works. It might take us a year. It might take us 2. I've had clients that have looked for 2 full years before they purchased, and it's worth it because then in the end they find the right thing and they're really happy. And we've also formed like this super solid relationship because we've spent a lot of time together. But yeah, there's no set number. And I have other clients that they find it on the first day that we go look. They've looked online, they're really clear on what they want, and they're like, oh, this is it. And it's very simple. And of course, those situations will also allow for different compensation because it's a different amount of time that's passed in what we've done together. So for every buyer that reaches out, we set up a property search, and depending on the area you're searching in, it will be in a different MLS dependent on the geographical location of your search. We belong to 4 MLSs. We cover basically a majority of South Central Colorado, but specifically the Highway 50 corridor. And so anywhere along there, we can help you find the right thing. When we set that search up, you're gonna get an email, usually daily is what I recommend, but we can make it only weekly or bi-weekly or whatever if you want. And you'll get those emails to show you what fits your search parameters that we discussed in the buyer consult. And when you get that, you can email it back to me or text me and say, hey, we gotta go see this. If you're not local and it's tricky to get there, I can always go preview a property, like film it and check it out prior to you coming in person if it's a long distance travel. Or we try to set a bunch of properties up for the same time and day so you can make one trip and look at everything. If you're local, let's go all the time. We can go on like a lunch break or after you get off work or whatever. It's great to have a chance to go look at multiple things together. So the other thing to know is that I need to set up the showings when you request them. Sometimes it will take a minute to get approval from a seller or their agent, and sometimes they require 24-hour notice. And I can't always fix or help that, but I'll do my best to make it happen quickly. Once it's approved, then I'll send the schedule to you. If we're seeing multiple properties in a time period, I'll usually send a Google map, and it has all the properties that we're gonna see in order of how we're going to see them, and it comes as a text link or in an email, and then you can just open it and follow along on your phone, and we'll go look at everything together. I'll usually ask you to rate the properties. I'll say, okay, was this on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 or a 1? And then we can kind of talk about why. I like to do that because it helps us summarize each property briefly so that I'm collecting your thoughts on what you love and don't love about different places. we found the right property. Yay! We're going to write an offer. I need a few things from you. They are full legal name as it appears on a government issued ID, because we'll use it at closing. I need how you want to take title. So if you're doing it jointly with somebody else or just all by yourself, or the title determines, how the property is going to pass on to somebody else if or when you are not in the picture anymore. And that's really important so that we get that all straight. It can be changed later, but it's nice to have it right off the bat. Best email address, because all of our documents are usually signed electronically. If this is a problem for you, let me know and I can bring paper copies of everything, or we can sign on my computer at a location that I meet you at. And then last of all, just a hopeful closing date. So all the dates and deadlines on the contract are going to be based off of the closing date, and we reverse engineer the process to say, okay, if we want to close by the 30th of the month, what needs to happen by all these other dates so that we meet the deadline of the closing date. So that's all I need. If you can text me those things or email those things, I can start working on the offer. So once I have the paperwork all ready, and there's a few other documents I'll send you to, we will review that together. So we'll set an appointment if you need to, or we can email back and forth with like, what is this line number 1.1? And I can explain in email, but it's usually easiest to talk through the contract and have it up on the computer screen, either in person or on a Google Meet. And we make sure that you have a clear understanding of everything that is in the contract before we submit the offer to the seller and the seller's agent. Once it's submitted, we wait. You usually won't hear from me unless I've heard something. So the minute I've heard something, whether it be a yes or a no, you will hear from me. And if it's getting close to the deadline and they still haven't responded, you'll hear from me to say, I'm following up, I'm trying to find out, or they've told me this, they're sending a counter, meaning they're not going to accept the offer, but they have some different terms they want to throw out there to us. All of those instances, you'll hear from me. We'll just be kind of waiting together. I'm invested. I want to see you succeed and get the property that you want, and I'll be there every step of the way. Then we have a few other steps if we go under contract. If we don't go under contract, we go back to steps 3, 4, and 5 and start over again, looking. If it's an absolute no and we decide we can't come to terms with the seller. If the contract is accepted, yay, congratulations. We are proceeding to step 7, which is you're under contract, super excited, and you will get an email, and it has our under contract timeline, and it is filled in with all of the details that you need to know about next steps for being under contract all the way to closing. So the first thing is going to be earnest money. It will tell you how much earnest money needs to be delivered and which title company we're using, which is where the earnest money needs to be delivered. And then it will also have options for inspectors and the date of when the inspection needs to be completed by. And then it also has closing date, appraisal date. It kind of like outlines the major points of the whole process that you need to be aware of as we're moving forward. So we'll work together on every single one of those steps, but I like you to have that email because a lot of people don't go back and like read into the contract. They don't look at all the dates and deadlines. They're not like, oh, this is when this happens. We've talked about it before when we reviewed the contract to submit it. It's nice to just have it in that email in a succinct, easy way to see. And things that you need to schedule, again, are earnest money, getting to the title company on time before the earnest money deadline, and then the inspection right away. So once those are scheduled, we'll coordinate and I'll be there with you for the inspection, and then everything else, you're basically not at the property again, unless you ask and you want to go take measurements or look at what paint colors to use or whatever. We can do that, but we don't really have to be at the property again until right before closing. We kind of sit back and wait for the lender to send the appraiser out. The appraiser goes out and does that without us there. And we set up property insurance. And it's really important that you're not only in communication with me, but also your lender, and getting them all of the documents and information that they need as quickly as possible so that they can move through the lending process and have all of that set up for you in time to close in time. Do I get my earnest money back if something falls through in the process? Like, honestly, every time I am trying to help someone get under contract, that's what they want to know. And I get it. It's a big chunk of money. You do get your earnest money back as long as we follow the contract dates and deadlines closely and we meet the dates and deadlines. If, for example, we go to inspection and there's something that you just can't handle about the property or isn't fixable, or we get to the point where, we've talked with the seller about it and they're not agreeing to fix it, we can back out and you get your earnest money back. If it doesn't appraise, if something happens with the loan that is not your fault. I say that because there's this whole other realm of circumstances where, let's say you go buy a car or go buy a bunch of new furniture and your credit changes and you've done it after the loan termination deadline, then it's tougher for us to get your earnest money back. And you'll need to be really careful about that. You don't want your finances to change, or you don't want to do anything that's going to affect what the lender has already pre-approved you at for the buying process. We want things to stay level until we've closed on the property. Don't switch jobs. Don't cut your hours. All those things are really, really important. But yes, you'll get your earnest money back because that's my job, is to protect the dates and deadlines in the contract, to protect you, to make sure that we go through all of the due diligence, and if something isn't the way it needs to be for you to buy the property, you get your earnest money back and we move on to another property. So after we've gone through the initial steps and stages of the dates and deadlines, the things that we're sitting back and waiting for, like the appraisal comes through and we'll say it's at value or above value. Heaven forbid it's below value. If it appraises below value, we have another set of negotiations to go through and some options, making up the difference on our end, or sometimes the seller will come down in price, or sometimes we'll meet halfway. We come up with some and the seller comes down in price and meet in the middle. But lots of options there, or we can just cancel and move on to a different property that will appraise for the value. Then we also have things like selecting your property insurance, which the lender can help with. And the lender and I both have lots of options and choices for that, especially if you're buying a mountain property. That can be tricky. There's different things about mountain properties like fire mitigation that you need to be aware of. And the last couple of weeks, we really are just sitting back and waiting, and that's when you're getting in all of your final loan documents. The lender may ask for a few more things. You're going through final loan approval. And one of those days, the lender will send an email and say, clear to close. Yay! That's what we're waiting for, is we're waiting for the clear to close. Every realtor's favorite 3 words. When we get that, then we know that we're on the very home stretch, and all we really need to do at that point is sign documents. Well, walk through and sign documents. So you get another email from us and we'll decide, how are you signing documents? Where are you signing documents? When I say how, I mean you may sign with a notary. We sometimes can do the walkthrough and sign at the new house that day. But normally it's at the title company. We go together. I'm there to answer any questions. The closer that's employed by the title company also can answer any questions. Sign the paperwork. I recommend that you bring the funds or wire the funds the day before so that it's already there, ready to go, because there can be some delays with that, and that can cause you to delay in closing. Our contracts usually state once closed and funded. So closing can happen with all the paperwork, but if the money's not there, it's not technically closed, and then we might end up having to wait to get the keys and such. So it's good to have it there the day before. If you can't be in person before closing, we will video and photograph the property and have you say, yep, it looks like it's in the condition I want to purchase it in. If you can be there, that's much better. We walk through together. I like to do some silly things like run all the faucets and check under the sinks and make sure nothing's leaking. I mean, I've walked into a walkthrough with a buyer before and the dishwasher had leaked all over the kitchen floor. And we had to call and say, hey, we can't close on this until the kitchen's mopped up and there's, we make sure there's no water damage and whatever's wrong with this funky dishwasher is fixed. All of those things matter because the minute you sign and fund the transaction, it's yours. So they become your problem if you haven't dealt with it or had the seller deal with it before you close. So the walkthrough is really key. I like to be really thorough. If we're signing with a notary, we can sign right there at the property, or if you're mail out and I've videoed and photographed, you'll be signing wherever you're at and mailing documents back to the title company. Sometimes we go to the walkthrough at the property and then go straight to the closing if time allows, or we can do the walkthrough the day before, all options. But walkthrough is an essential step. If you're buying land, we'll just go drive by it and make sure there's nothing crazy happening on the land, like someone else has built a house there or something. Maybe you're someone that you've reached out and you're just not sure yet. Like you're not ready to buy something. You don't even know when you're gonna be ready to buy something. You're just kind of curious or want to know the market better, or you're thinking you will buy something but no idea when. We call these C leads, not that you're rated a C, just that it's like not at the top of our priority list that's happening right now. And all we do differently, you're going to receive like all the same services and help that any other lead would receive. We're probably just not going to harass you as much. We'll kind of leave you alone. We can set up a search for you to be viewing properties and see what you like, and it's a good way for you to get educated on the area and what you want. You will receive like our newsletter and real estate information if you're willing to subscribe. I'll probably be calling you every few months or emailing or texting you just to check in and make sure that the search that we set up is still working for you. But I'm going to let you take the lead for the most part on that. If I sense that you're not quite ready, we'll kind of stay back and wait in the wings until you are. And then we'll employ all of these steps and strategies, including searching actively for off-market listings and scouring the MLS, the multiple listing service listings. When the time comes, we'll get you to the right place.